By morning, the corridors were quiet in a way heavier than chaos. Press monitors were off, routine updates hummed through official channels, yet every aide, clerk, and diplomat moved as if they knew something unspoken. Damilola Adeyemi leaned against the oak door of his father's office, shoulders tense, fingers tapping the polished wood. It wasn't public scrutiny that unnerved him. It was the silence. One small misstep could shatter everything. A junior aide appeared briefly at the end of the hall. "They're watching," she murmured. Damilola's chest tightened. One glance at the embassy corridors, at the Korean flag fluttering in the morning light, and he understood. Every movement was a signal, every silence a message. Seo Yuna passed, heels clicking against marble. Her stride was measured, posture impeccable, yet beneath the surface, tension trembled as she smoothed her blazer. She carried an unseen arsenal. Documents, statements, plans, shaping her story even as others tried to write it for her. Damilola wanted to speak, to warn her, but even a single word could undo months of careful balance. Yoon-jae Kim appeared, not a confidant, but a variable in Damilola's equation. "You can't just stand there," she said, voice low and urgent. "They're interpreting everything. Your hesitation is a statement they'll exploit." Her warning was surgical, clinical. "I know," he said, throat tight, "but if I act, if I speak, it could..." Even the thought of using the truth to protect her carried hidden costs. Every option was morally gray, every choice collateral damage. By mid-morning, subtle exposure arrived in coded memos and whispers. Monitors glowed with updates. "Ambassador under review," policy alignment questioned. Damilola read them repeatedly, each line a sting of impotence. He drafted statements, shredded them, drafted again. Each word was a potential weapon or trap. He found Seo in the garden, not seeking her, but because it was neutral ground. She stood by the fountain, notebook in hand, scanning the city as if calculating her next move. "You're still silent," he said, trying for calm. "I'm not silent," she replied, precise, almost cold. "I'm documenting every rumor, leak, whisper. You think silence protects, but knowledge does. You should know that." Her gaze cut through him. He realized she was no longer waiting for him to protect her. She was maneuvering, building defenses he couldn't see. His protective hesitation had become a luxury he could no longer afford. Weeks passed. Every hallway meeting, press update, and whispered conversation became a game of anticipation. Damilola drafted and deleted statements, monitored communications, measured gestures. SEO acted too. Subtle reallocations of resources, carefully phrased public statements, private clarifications to allies. She shaped outcomes even while the world assumed she was passive. Every silent glance between them became a coded conversation. Each misread detail could bring catastrophe. Tundi watched from a doorway, leaning casually, observing the interplay with the patience of a chess master. "You think you're protecting her," he said smoothly, "but protection is one form of action. Sometimes it's manipulation, sometimes positioning. You choose the narrative people see, or the one that defines power behind closed doors." Damilola clenched and unclenched his fists. He had no illusions. Whatever he did, someone would suffer. Then a message pinged. Yoon-jae had found a lead to exonerate Seo, but going public would expose his family's hidden influence and the broader system his father had maintained. Hours passed. Dawn light crept into the office. Fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every option was fraught. Hesitation wasn't cowardice. It was understanding the depth of the trap. Interactions with Seo became taut with meaning. A glance in the hallway, a shared conference room, a brush past in the lobby. Every movement held stakes. She paused one evening by the floor-to-ceiling windows, eyes scanning distant rooftops, searching for reassurance. He wanted to speak, to step forward, but speech might undo everything she had built. Hearings began quietly, efficiently, lethal in their neutrality. Seo's answers were precise, every omission a calculated signal. Damilola's chest tightened with every measured silence of her response. The calm competence made her more dangerous than panic ever could. In the garden, winter sun low and cold, she stopped him. "Why do you just watch?" Her voice carried expectation, accusation, recognition. Because if I speak, he said, it could destroy the balance you've built. Not just you, but everything around us. Her gaze held his. Your silence shapes outcomes too. You act by doing nothing. That's a choice in itself. Yunjae confronted him later. You're not walking a tightrope, Dami. You're calculating in action. But someone else will move the pieces, and their motives aren't yours. Damilola leaned back, chest tight, hands pressed to the table. He knew it. Every option carried peril, every move moral calculus. The world outside would judge consequences without understanding them. Then Tunde's deeper motives emerged. Not merely family scheming, but systemic reshaping. Every inquiry, every leak, every rumor had a purpose beyond personal gain. A test of loyalty, redistribution of influence, lesson in power. SEO had been collateral, but also a fulcrum in a game too large for personal protection alone. Damilola understood. Some outcomes were inevitable, some sacrifices unavoidable. Love, fragile and intense, had to survive in the margins, in spaces left by moral complexity and political necessity. The hearings continued, precise, unflinching. No dramatics, no shouting, just a slow grind of questions and careful answers. Each phrase Seo delivered carried weight. Every omission became a signal. Damilola sat out of reach, fingers flexing against the armrest, heart hammering, not from fear for himself, but from the awareness that even a small misstep could ripple into catastrophe. Tunde's influence did not vanish. Policies shifted, favors redirected, alliances tested, all orchestrated subtly, unseen by outsiders. Damilola realized that while he thought he was protecting Seo by doing nothing, he was walking into Tunde's design traps. Hesitation, internal debate, discarded statements, they were exactly what Tunde wanted. One afternoon, a private message from Seo arrived. There's a path, but it's not yours to lead. Decide whether you want to be part of the resolution or a footnote in someone else's story. Her agency was absolute. She wasn't waiting for him, wasn't silently hoping he'd act. She was signaling a boundary, intervene on her terms or step back. He turned to Yunjae for counsel. Follow her path, Ureninoich, she said, or enforce your own. Power isn't neutral. It exacts payment. Her ambiguity frustrated him. No clear moral compass, no heroic choice. Damilola acted, neither boldly nor silently. A timed memo, a subtle redirection of attention, a nuanced clarification in private channels. Not public, not heroic, but effective. The immediate threat to Seo dissipated, though consequences would echo in ways he couldn't predict. The embassy corridors were quiet the next morning, tension lingering like electricity. He spotted Seo at the atrium, reviewing documents with composed intensity. Her gaze met his. No expectation, no accusation, only acknowledgement. You acted, she said, not on my terms entirely, but enough to shift outcomes. That matters. Damilola nodded. Months of restraint and careful intervention pressed against him. He had protected her, navigated risks, and recognized that silence and action were instruments in the same moral calculus. Tunde's networks recalibrated quietly. Inquiries concluded. Headlines faded. Publicly calm, but Damilola and Seo knew the deeper currents remained. Battles invisible, scars real. Every choice, restraint, intervention left its mark. Weeks later, he saw Seo in the garden. Winter sun pale, air sharp. She looked at him, not needing protection, but as a participant in a shared arena of strategy, morality, and survival. Dami, she said, what matters isn't what others think. It's what we choose to do in moments where every choice could harm someone, ourselves, them, or the system we navigate. He absorbed the words. Love had evolved. It was no longer fragile longing. It was recognition, respect, and understanding of agency, both theirs and others. It could survive, but only through engagement with the messy, morally complex world around them. Yunjae observed from a distance, aware her role had shifted. Even advisors are subject to unseen pressures. And Tunde, ever calculating, remained a shadow, reminding him that power is never neutral and survival often demands compromise, courage, and clarity. Damilola watched Seo walk away, notebook under arm, steps purposeful. Their story, love, connection, would not be written in headlines or whispered in corridors. It would be composed in precise choices, respect for agency, acknowledgement that every action carries consequences. Snow fell again, deliberate, quiet. It coated the city, impartial and indifferent. Life, power, and love could coexist, but only if handled with awareness, strategy, and moral resolve. Silence had its place, action had its place, and in the spaces between, they had found a way to endure. No grand confessions, no cinematic climax, only quiet reckoning, and the lingering, unspoken question: when love must navigate systems larger than itself, how do you measure the cost of survival? And is survival alone enough?